20 dessert plates, 20 guests, and under each plate a piece of paper that was about to end my marriage. I stood at the far end of the table with a glass of water in my hand because I was still nursing my son at night, and wine would have been a bad call given what was about to happen. My husband sat at the other end, leaned back, napkin in his lap, full of the roast I'd spent 6 hours preparing. His mother had her hand on his forearm the way she always did, light possessive. At table 3, a woman in a burgundy dress lifted her fork toward the chocolate cake. She didn't know her picture was underneath it. I used my teacher voice, the one that stops 24 second graders cold in the middle of a food fight. Everyone, please look under your dessert plate. 20 hands reached, paper crinkled against ceramic. Then quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear someone swallow from across the room. 72 hours earlier, I was cleaning glue sticks off a table. Tuesday, Crestview Elementary. My classroom smelled like tempera paint and the industrial hand sanitizer the school bought in bulk, and the Valentine's Day cards were still pinned to the bulletin board because March had arrived, and I still hadn't 24 minutes to take them down. The fluorescent light above my reading corner flickered on and off, the same one I'd put in a maintenance request for in January. My phone buzzed against the desk at 11:47 inches the morning. Trent, Women's Day Friday, having 20 people over, dinner, make it perfect. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another one, deleted that too. The third attempt said something about how 3 days wasn't enough notice for a dinner party of 20 while also teaching full-time and keeping a 14-month-old alive, but I deleted that one before the period. What I sent, okay. Any allergies I should know about, just make it nice, Mel. Then 10 seconds later, my mom's coming early to help. The quotation marks were his, and they were the most honest thing he'd typed. Deborah's help looked like arriving 3 hours early, rearranging whatever I'd set up, and finding a way to mention that Trent's ex-girlfriend used to make her brisket from scratch. I closed the text and put my phone face down. The children were coming back from the library, and I had a lesson on fractions that wasn't going to teach itself. I texted Jody during my planning period. Jody Ray, mother of Connor in my class, the woman who always stayed an extra 5 minutes at pickup to ask how her kid was really doing, the kind of question most parents forgot to ask. I messaged her about carpool logistics for the week, and somewhere in the middle she wrote back, "Girl, my ex used to do that. Text me the menu and I'll drop off my slow cooker. My ex used to do that." I read it twice. Then I put my phone away and didn't respond to that part. At pickup, I stood at the classroom door and used the voice. The teacher voice, the one that projects clean across a cafeteria, the one that holds still and calm while everything around it goes sideways. 24 kids filed out in a neat line. A mother I didn't know well, standing near the cubbies, said, "I wish I could control a room like you." I laughed, told her it was mostly practice and partly stubbornness. Beck babbled the whole drive home. I made a grocery list in my head. Tablecloths, napkins, something Deborah couldn't criticize. The questions I didn't put on the list. Why does he never ask? Why does he tell? Beck was asleep by 8:30. Trent was still at work or wherever Trent went on Tuesdays when he said he was at work. I went to the garage for folding chairs. The concrete was cold through my socks, and the whole space smelled like motor oil and the leaf blower Trent bought last fall and used exactly once. I pulled open the storage cabinet looking for the extra tablecloths my mother had given us when we moved in. Under a copy of the Raleigh News and Observer from October, I found Trent's old phone. He'd upgraded 6 months ago. I'd asked why he didn't trade the old one in, and he said something about keeping it as a backup, and I said okay. Because I always said okay. Because saying anything else required a conversation I didn't have the energy for after a full day of teaching and a full night of Beck and a full life of being the person who kept everything running while Trent managed his schedule on his own terms. The phone was dead. I brought it inside and plugged it into the kitchen charger, telling myself I just wanted the old photos of Beck's first bath for the slideshow Deborah had requested for Friday. Just photos. The phone booted. The iCloud sync icon spun. Messages loaded. The contact name was S. Just the letter. 212 messages. I opened the most recent one stamped yesterday afternoon, and the sync was still live, which meant every word he typed on the new phone was quietly copying itself here into this dead thing plugged into my kitchen counter. S, I miss you. When can I see you again, Trent Saturday? The roommate has a thing with her mom. S lol, the roommate. You need to stop calling her that, Trent. What else would I call her? She's basically a live-in nanny at this point. Tried reading it backward, as if rearranging the letters might rearrange what they meant. Then I said it out loud to the empty kitchen because maybe the air would change it. Maybe hearing my own voice say those two words would make them absurd enough to dismiss. The roommate. 14 months of night feedings. 3 years of marriage. 4 years of knowing this man. Cooking his meals, grading papers until 1 a.m, pumping breast milk in a school bathroom during my lunch break because the lactation room was being used as storage. All of that, and I was the roommate, the live-in nanny. I sat on the kitchen floor. The tile was cold, and I could feel the grout lines pressing through my leggings. I didn't cry. I just sat there with the phone in my lap, its screen still glowing, his words still visible. I scrolled deeper. The name filled itself in. Sienna, his college ex. 8 months of messages. Photos from dinners at restaurants I'd never been to. A selfie on a rooftop bar in Durham, Trent's arm around a woman with dark hair and a wide smile I recognized from his old Facebook albums back before he'd cleaned them up when we got engaged. Then I found the money. Venmo, Trent to S, V. $1,400 a month every month for 6 months straight. Plus separate charges, $340 for a dinner, $280 for flowers. I'd never received $190 at Victoria's Secret, and I had not owned new lingerie in 2 years because we were cutting back on extras. $11,000 from the joint savings account that had gone from $19,000 to $8,000. The money I'd asked about last March, the question that made Trent lean back in his chair and shake his head and say, "Mel, do you hear yourself? This is why we fight." The money I'd apologized for asking about. The money that made me the paranoid one, the controlling one, the wife who checked bank statements and needed to relax. I screenshotted everything. Every message, every Venmo receipt, every photo. Sent the whole batch to my own email in a folder I named PTA Budget 2025. Then I put the phone back in the garage drawer under the newspaper, exactly where I'd found it. Trent came home at 11. I was in bed with the light off. He slid in beside me and put his hand on my hip the way he did when he wanted me to know he was there, and I lay perfectly still and said, "Chairs are ready for Friday." "You're the best," he said. I stared at the ceiling until he started to snore. I did not sleep that night. By 6 a.m. Wednesday, I had cross-referenced every text timestamp with Trent's shared Google Calendar. The work conference in Charlotte on March 2nd was Sienna's birthday dinner. The team-building weekend in Asheville in January was a 2-night stay at an Airbnb booked under her name. I had it all laid out in my notes app, organized by date, the way I organized lesson plans, because that's what I knew how to do. Organize things. Make them make sense. Trent came downstairs yawning. "Morning. Coffee ready on the counter. You look tired. Beck keep you up?" "Yeah." I let a beat pass. "Hey, the guest list for Friday. You said 20. Can you send me names? I want to do place cards." He glanced up from his phone. "Place cards, fancy. Your mom wants it nice. I'll text you the list." The list came at 10 while I was reviewing spelling tests. 20 names. I read each one, my thumb scrolling slowly. I stopped at number 14. Sienna V., new coworker from Durham office. He had invited her. To our home. To sit at a table I would set, eat food I would cook on a night that was supposed to celebrate women while in their private messages. I was the roommate. He wanted me to serve dinner to the woman he'd been sleeping with for 8 months. He wanted me to smile and pour her wine. I called Jody from the teacher bathroom during my lunch break. "Can you pick up Beck Friday at 5:30 and keep him for the evening?" "Of course. Everything okay?" I held the phone against my ear and watched myself in the bathroom mirror. My face looked exactly the same. That was the strangest part. I found something in the garage last night, I said. I need to think. Wednesday evening. Jody's kitchen table. Beck and Connor playing with blocks. In the next room, the sound of small plastic towers collapsing and being rebuilt over and over. I laid my phone between us and scrolled through the screenshots. Jody read without speaking. She took her time. When she got to the Venmo receipts, she set down her coffee. The SIM card thing, she said. You told me his messages stopped showing on the family plan 6 months ago. He said it was a network issue. Somebody set up a separate line. Jody looked at me. His mother just retired from AT&T. 25 years. She still has her employee login. We didn't say anything for a while. The blocks crashed in the other room. Connor laughed. Jody pulled a business card from the junk drawer by the fridge. Caitlin Shore Family Law. She got me through mine, Jody said. Call her. I called from Jody's bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub, the door locked. Beck's laughter muffled through the wall. Caitlin Shore picked up on the second ring. She talked the way people talk when they've said these words 1,000 times and still mean every one of them. North Carolina is a fault state, she said. Adultery is an absolute bar to alimony. If he cheated, he cannot receive spousal support, and the court is required to award it to you. What about the money he took dissipation? $11,000 from joint savings spent on his affair partner. The court will credit you that amount in equitable distribution. I was quiet. She kept going. North Carolina also allows alienation of affection lawsuits. You can sue the other woman directly. More quiet. 10 seconds of it. I could hear Beck through the wall saying, "Up, up," to Jody. One more question, I said. Can I serve him at our own dinner table? You can serve the complaint anywhere. Your own home qualifies. A pause. We'll file for divorce from bed and board on fault grounds, adultery. That locks in alimony, property division, custody claims immediately. The absolute divorce comes after the 1-year separation, but the financial and custody fight starts the moment we file. I hung up and stared at Jody's bathroom mirror. The light above the sink buzzed faintly, that low electrical whine that becomes invisible until you stop and listen. My face in the glass still looked the same freckles, the same messy bun, the same tired skin. But my eyes were different. 3 years I'd stared at myself in mirrors and seen a woman who was always one argument away from being wrong. I drove home, pulled into the driveway. Trent's truck was parked crooked the way he always left it, because straightening out took another 30 seconds, and 30 seconds was too much to ask. I walked inside. He was on the couch, phone in hand, feet on the coffee table. The TV was on, but he was looking at the screen in his palm. I leaned down and kissed his cheek. The menu's going to be perfect, I said. He smiled without looking up. That's my girl. Thursday afternoon. The last bus pulled away from Crestview Elementary at 3:42, and I sat at my desk in the empty classroom with my laptop open and the door shut. Beck was at daycare until 5:30. I had an hour and 48 minutes. Construction paper smell. The heater clicking on and off. Beck's daycare photo pinned to my desk lamp, his face caught mid-laugh, 2 teeth showing. I looked at that photo for a long time before I opened a blank document. I wrote 2 toasts. Version A came second, the safe one, the expected one. Thank you for being such an amazing provider, such a dedicated father. I'm so lucky, every word a lie, I could say in my sleep because I'd been saying variations of it for 3 years. I typed it up clean and saved it as toast, final, dough EC. The kind of file name Trent would find unremarkable if he ever opened my laptop, which he wouldn't because he'd never once asked what I was working on. Version B came first, the real one. I wrote it on index cards by hand, 1 sentence per card, because handwriting slowed me down enough to choose every word carefully. Each card held a fact, a date, a dollar amount, a direct quote from his messages. I laid them across my desk the way I laid out lesson plans, sequenced for maximum clarity, the way you teach 7-year-olds first. This happened, then this happened, and here is what it means. Then I walked to the teacher workroom, empty at 4 o'clock the way it always was. The color printer hummed to life. I fed it 20 sets of screenshots, each set different text messages for some guests, Venmo receipts for others, the rooftop bar selfie for one in particular. The machine spit them out warm and sharp-smelling. I put them in a manila folder, slid it into my school bag, and zipped it shut. I called Jody from the reading corner sitting in the beanbag chair where I usually sat with my students. My ex told everyone I was bipolar, Jody said when I asked her how she'd survived it. His mother backed him up. Told the judge I was unstable. I lost 18 months with Connor before I got the custody reversed. What changed? I started writing things down. Dates, times, exact words. His exact words. When the judge finally saw the pattern, it stopped being her word against his. It was a record. I looked at my index cards spread across the desk like a paper trail leading somewhere I couldn't see yet. Trent called me financially abusive, I said, for looking at our bank statement. Jody was quiet for a moment. Yeah, mine called me controlling for checking the credit card. She paused. Same playbook. Different stage. I added a line to the toast. Then another. Each one a lie with a timestamp. After I hung up, I texted Caitlin Shore, can I have the complaint drafted by tomorrow at 4? Her reply came in under a minute DBB complaint, plus equitable distribution, alimony, and custody. I'll have a process server standing by Friday evening. I put my phone in my pocket, gathered the index cards, and slid them into the inside pocket of my cardigan. Then I picked up Beck from daycare, heated leftover pasta for dinner, gave him a bath, read him Goodnight Moon twice, and put him to bed. I did all of it, with the cards pressing against my ribs through the fabric like a second heartbeat. Thursday night. Deborah arrived at 6 to help. She walked through the front door without knocking the way she always did, and went straight to the dining room to inspect what I'd set up so far. I'd spent the afternoon after pickup arranging plates, testing tablecloths, moving chairs. Deborah picked up a paper napkin between 2 fingers. Honey, are you using paper napkins? For 20 people, I'll get cloth ones tomorrow, Deborah. Trent said, this needs to be nice. His boss is coming. I smiled. The teacher smile, the one that works on upset parents during conferences. It will be beautiful. I promise. She put the napkin down and moved to the kitchen, where she opened the fridge and inventoried its contents shelf by shelf, making small sounds of disapproval at each item she found insufficient. I stood in the doorway and let her. I had spent 3 years letting her. One more night would cost me nothing. Trent came home at 7:30. He walked through the dining room, scanning the table the way a foreman walks a job site. Nodded, squeezed my shoulder. See? When you don't overthink things, you're great at this. I started to say something about the seating arrangement using the firm, organized tone I used when I was managing 24 kids and 3 parent volunteers during a field trip. Trent held up a hand. Save the teacher voice for your kids, Mel. This is a dinner party. It's supposed to be fun. I closed my mouth, filed it. The teacher voice. The one he thought was only good for controlling children. I'd remember he said that. He settled onto the couch and pulled out his phone. I sat at the kitchen table, finishing the place cards in my neatest handwriting, while Deborah loaded the dishwasher and told me about a casserole recipe she'd seen on Facebook that would have been so much better than what I was. Planning. Trent texted from 10 feet away, and I could see the glow of his screen reflected in the dark TV. His thumbs moved fast. He was smiling at whatever was on that screen, a real smile, the kind that used his whole face. The kind I hadn't gotten in months. 3 lies before bedtime. Working on the Henderson project while his screen reflected someone else's name in the television glass. Mom's just trying to help, while his mother helped him hide a SIM card. Love you tossed over his shoulder on the way upstairs, the words landing somewhere behind me like coins dropped on a counter. After he fell asleep and Deborah drove home, I stood in the shower with the water hot enough to fog the glass and rehearsed version B under my breath. The water swallowed the words before they reached the walls. Every sentence sounded different out loud than it had on paper. Stronger, scarier. I said them again. And again. Until they stopped shaking. Friday. I dropped Beck at Jody's at 5 o'clock. He reached for me when I tried to hand him over, his small fingers catching the collar of my shirt, and I held him against my chest for a beat longer than I should have. He smelled like applesauce and the lavender soap I used for his baths. Jody took him gently. "You've got this," she said. "Call me the second you need me." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice right then, so I just nodded and walked to the car. The house was ready by 5:30. I'd spent the morning before work putting fresh flowers on every surface, $47, from my personal checking account, the last of it. The roast had been in the oven since noon, rosemary and garlic filling every room, and the expensive garlic from the farmer's market, because Deborah could tell the difference, and tonight of all nights, I didn't need her commentary. Table set for 20. Cloth napkins borrowed from Jody because I didn't own 20 matching cloth napkins, and the budget for this party was whatever Trent hadn't sent to Sienna Voss. Place cards in my teacher handwriting, neat block letters, each name centered. Guests arrived between 6 and 6:30. Trent worked the room like he was running for office. Handshakes, backslaps, the big disarming grin. When everyone had a drink, he put his arm around me and said, "My beautiful wife who put this all together in 3 days. Is she amazing or what?" Everyone clapped. I smiled and held my water glass. Deborah positioned herself next to Trent at the head of the table and received compliments on the setup. "Well, I helped a little," she said, adjusting a centerpiece she hadn't touched. At 6:15, the doorbell rang. Trent answered it. She was wearing a burgundy dress, dark hair past her shoulders, blown out straight, confident walk. Trent brought her into the living room with his hand on her elbow, the way a host guides a guest of honor. "Everyone, this is Sienna. She's new on our Durham project." Brilliant addition to the team. Sienna crossed the room and extended her hand to me. Her grip was warm and her nails were done, a French manicure, the kind I stopped getting 2 years ago when Trent said we were cutting back on extras. "Your home is beautiful," she said. "Thank you. Trent talks about you." Her smile didn't change. Trent's did for just a second, a flicker around the eyes. Then he steered Sienna toward table 3, and I excused myself to check on the roast. In the kitchen, I gripped the edge of the counter and breathed. Jasmine and bergamot. That was her perfume. The same scent I'd found on Trent's collar in January, the scent I'd asked him about, the scent he'd explained away as a new air freshener at the office. The air freshener that wore French manicures and burgundy dresses and was currently sitting at table 3 eating appetizers I'd made at 6 o'clock this morning. Dinner went smoothly. The roast was good. The wine was good. I refilled glasses and cleared plates and smiled when spoken to. Trent told a story about a construction project that went sideways and everyone laughed. Deborah told a story about Trent as a little boy and everyone laughed harder. Sienna laughed too politely from table 3, and once I caught her looking at me and then looking away fast. After dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, pulled the index cards from my cardigan pocket. Version B. 15 cards. I read them through, one by one, moving my lips. The woman in the mirror was wearing the same gray cardigan she wore to parent-teacher conferences, the same messy bun, the same face. But she looked ready. She looked like someone who had decided something and was about to do it. I was standing in my own bathroom in my own house, holding evidence of my husband's affair in my own handwriting, and I felt calm. Genuinely calm. The kind of calm that settles in after the fear has been so loud for so long that it burns itself out and leaves only quiet. My manila folder from school was in my bag in the coat closet, 20 printouts. I had the toast. I had the paper. I had Caitlin's process server parked on the street outside engine running, waiting for my text. Trent knocked. "Babe, they're asking for dessert." "You want to do the toast first." I put the cards back in my pocket. Opened the door. Smiled at him. Coming. He put his hand on the small of my back and guided me toward the dining room. 20 faces in candlelight, dessert plates stacked on the sideboard. His hand on my back steering the way you steer something that belongs to you. I picked up my water glass, opened my mouth, and Deborah stood up first. Her chair scraped against the hardwood. The sound cut through the room like a fork dragged across a plate, and every head turned. Deborah was standing wine glass, raised her free hand, touching Trent's shoulder. Before my wonderful daughter-in-law says anything, Deborah said, "I'd like to say a few words." Trent's smile shifted. A slight nod to his mother, quick, barely visible, the kind of signal between two people who have rehearsed. "I saw it. I was the only one looking for it." Deborah addressed the table. "Melanie is such a devoted mother. She gives everything to that baby. Sometimes I worry she gives so much to Beck that she forgets to take care of herself." Deborah paused. Let the silence work. Or her marriage. A few guests laughed, the uncomfortable kind, the laugh that fills dead air. Trent works so hard, 60, 70 hours some weeks, and he never complains. She turned to look at me across the table. "I just hope Melanie appreciates what she has. Not everyone is so lucky." More quiet laughter. Someone reached for their wine. "To the women in this room," Deborah said, raising her glass higher, "let's remember that behind every great man is a woman who chooses to support him." Happy Women's Day. Everyone drank. Deborah sat down. The room applauded politely. I stood there with my water glass in my hand and my index cards pressing against my ribs, and I decoded every word in real time, because that's what I do. I'm a teacher. I read rooms for a living. 24 7-year-olds taught me how to hear what people are actually saying underneath the words they choose. Forgets to take care of herself meant she's been unwell, or her marriage meant she's the one neglecting Trent. 60, 70 hours a week built the alibi for all those evenings he wasn't home. I just hope Melanie appreciates what she has meant, that if I complained about anything tonight, if I said one word out of line, 20 witnesses would remember the ungrateful wife who couldn't appreciate her hard-working husband. Deborah hadn't given a toast. She had inoculated the room. My hand went to my cardigan pocket. The index cards were right there. 15 of them. Every lie, every dollar, every timestamp. I could pull them out and read them and let the facts speak for themselves. Then I looked at Trent. He was watching me. His smile was still on, but his eyes had gone flat and careful the way they went when he was calculating. He was checking. Seeing if Deborah's words had landed, seeing if I was going to do anything stupid. And I understood. This was planned. Mother and son coordinated. The woman who gives so much to her baby that she's lost her grip on reality. If I gave the toast now, right after that, I would look exactly like what Deborah had just described. 20 people would see the unhinged wife attacking the man who works 70 hours a week. The evidence wouldn't matter. The truth wouldn't matter. The first story always wins, and Deborah told hers first. I stood up, raised my glass. "Thank you, Deborah. That was lovely." I smiled at the room, held the smile the way I hold it during parent-teacher conferences when a father tells me his kid doesn't need to read because he's going to play football. "To my hard-working husband," I said, "Happy Women's Day." 20 people clapped. Trent's shoulders dropped half an inch. Deborah picked up her fork. The room exhaled. I set my glass down and walked to the bathroom, closed the door, locked it. The tile was cold through the fabric of my dress. I sat on the bathroom floor with my back against the tub and spread the index cards across the white ceramic, like a hand of cards I'd folded before anyone could see them. 15 cards. 15 truths. Every one of them useless now. I pulled out my phone and texted Jody. I couldn't do it. 3 dots appeared. Then, what happened? His mom went first. Set the whole room up to think I'm crazy. A pause. Longer than usual. Then, Mel. She did that because she's afraid of you. You know that, right? I stared at the screen. I didn't respond. My thumb found the screenshots folder. I scrolled to Trent's messages. Read the words again, the ones I'd memorized by now, the ones that played on a loop behind everything I did and said and thought for the past 3 days. The roommate has a thing with her mom. What else would I call her? She's basically a live-in nanny at this point. And Sienna's reply, lol, the roommate. They were laughing. While I was nursing Beck at 2 a.m, while I was grading papers on the living room floor because the desk was covered in Trent's laundry, while I was making flashcards for my students and heating formula and cleaning spit up off my shoulder before parent conferences, they were sending each other messages and laughing at the woman doing all of it. A knock. Trent's voice through the door, smooth, concerned. The voice he used when he wanted me to know he was being patient. Mel, you okay in there? People are asking about dessert. I pressed the back of my head against the tub. I'll be right. His footsteps moved away down the hall. I heard him say something to the table about Melanie checking on the cake. Light laughter. The sound of 20 people who had already forgotten Deborah's toast because it had done its job and settled into the air like furniture. The bathroom was small. I could reach the toilet and the sink and the tub without standing up, and the floor was cold and the seams between tiles pressed ridges into my palms when I leaned back. Through the door I could hear them. 20 people eating my food, drinking the wine I'd bought with the credit card that was almost maxed, because our savings had been drained by $1,400 monthly payments to a woman in a burgundy dress. The smell of my own cooking drifted under the door. Rosemary. Garlic. The good stuff, the kind I'd driven 20 minutes to buy because Deborah could taste the difference. I'd spent $47 on flowers and 6 hours on a roast for a dinner party celebrating the man who called me the roommate. I picked up my phone. The screenshots glowed. I looked at my reflection in the dark strip at the top of the screen, my face small and warped. And then I thought about something else, something older than Trent, older than the phone in the garage, older than the $11,000. I was 11. I was sitting on the stairs in my mother's house in Sanford. The front door had just closed. My father had walked through it carrying one suitcase, and my mother was at the kitchen sink, washing dishes as if nothing had happened, and I was sitting on the 3rd step with my pajama pants pulled over my knees because the house was cold, and nobody had turned on the heat. I never asked where he went. My mother said, "Don't ask," so I didn't ask, and 20 years later I was still sitting on a staircase. In some form or another, my knees pulled up, my mouth shut, waiting for the next person to walk through the next door. Don't ask. Don't fight. If you're good enough, they stay. I had carried that sentence inside me like a stone in a pocket. It shaped every choice. Stay quiet when Trent yelled. Apologize when he called me paranoid. Say okay to a dinner party for 20 on 3 days' notice. Don't look at the bank statement. Don't question the late nights. Don't. And for a moment on that bathroom floor with the tile cold and the index cards scattered and the sound of laughter coming through the door, I almost believed him again. Almost believed that maybe I was making too much of it. Maybe the roommate was just a joke between friends. Maybe the money had a reasonable explanation. Maybe Deborah was right, and I didn't appreciate what I had. I opened the screenshots one more time. $1,400 a month. Victoria's Secret. The rooftop bar selfie with his arm around her. Live-in nanny. There was no maybe. I sat with that for a while. Just sat with it. The cards on the floor, the phone in my hand, the muffled clink of forks, and the low hum of conversation, and the smell of rosemary leaking in from the world I had built for a man who didn't live in it. Then I thought about Monday. Ava Cortez. 7 years old. Bramis brain braids gap-toothed smile, sat in the 2nd row by the window. She'd raised her hand during circle time and asked a question that landed in the room like something dropped from a height. Miss Pryor, what if nobody believes me when I tell the truth? I'd crouched down to her level, looked her in the eye, used my teacher voice, the calm one, the one that means I'm saying something important and I need you to hear it. Then, you tell it anyway, I'd said. The truth doesn't need everyone to believe it. I'd believed it with my whole chest when I said it, and I was sitting on a bathroom floor, unable to do the same thing for myself. I looked at the index cards, picked one up, read it, put it down, picked up another. The toast had failed. Deborah had poisoned the room, and the toast was dead. I accepted that, but the truth was still the truth. It didn't matter if 20 people believed it tonight. It mattered that it was said, that it left my mouth and entered the air and became something that couldn't be taken back or gaslit into nothing or explained away as paranoia. The truth doesn't need everyone to believe it. It just needs to be said. I gathered the cards. All 15. Stood up. My legs were stiff from the cold tile, and my dress had a crease from sitting too long. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back had been crying without knowing it, 2 thin tracks drying on her cheeks, mascara holding by a thread. She looked wrecked. She also looked done. But the toast was wrong. A speech was the wrong move. Deborah had killed the speech before it started. I washed my face, dried it with the hand towel Trent's mother had criticized for being too thin, straightened my cardigan, opened the bathroom door. The hallway was quiet. The dining room was loud, 20 people full of my food waiting for chocolate cake. I walked past the dining room, past the coat rack where my school bag hung with the manila folder inside, past Trent's voice saying something about the construction project in Durham getting another laugh. I went to the kitchen, pulled down 20 dessert plates from the cabinet, reached into my school bag hanging on the coat rack, and brought the manila folder to the counter next to the chocolate cake I'd baked from Deborah's own recipe. I sorted the printouts by table number. Table 1, Trent's work colleagues' Venmo receipts. Business expenses that weren't business expenses. $1,400 a month to SV, regular as a utility bill. Table 2, the mutual friends' text screenshots. The roommate, live-in nanny, the jokes they thought were private. Table 3, Sienna's place, the rooftop bar selfie. His arm around her, both of them smiling, the Durham skyline behind them, time-stamped the same night he told me he was at a work conference in Charlotte. Deborah's place, a printout of the AT&T employee portal showing a secondary SIM card activated 6 months ago. Her login, her name. Trent's place, nothing underneath the plate. On top sat a sealed envelope with his name in my handwriting. Inside, a single index card. The last one I'd written, the one that didn't make it into the toast. It said, "You called me the roommate. I just moved out." I slid one printout under each dessert plate face down, cut the chocolate cake into neat squares. Deborah's recipe, the one she'd emailed me last Thanksgiving with a note that said Trent's favorite since he was 5. I placed each square on top of the paper it was hiding. Then I pulled out my phone. To Caitlin's process server parked on the street, come to the front door in 15 minutes. To Jody, I'm not giving the toast. I'm doing something else. 3 dots. Then, what dessert? I picked up the first 2 plates and carried them to the dining room. 2 trips. 10 plates each. The ceramic clinked softly as I set them down, one in front of each guest. The candles had burned to half height, and the room smelled like melted wax, and the rosemary roast and the wine I hadn't touched. Trent leaned back in his chair with his top button undone, belly full of my cooking, watching me serve with the satisfied look of a man whose world was performing exactly the way he'd designed it. "Dessert," he said to the table. "My wife, ladies and gentlemen." He spread his hands like he was presenting a gift. I set the last plate in front of him. The sealed envelope with his name in my handwriting on top, white, against the dark tablecloth. He glanced at it, didn't pick it up. I walked to the far end of the table, the other end. The end where nobody had been sitting all evening. 20 faces turned toward me. Before we eat, I said I want to say something I should have said during Deborah's toast. I wasn't ready then. I paused. Let the silence hold. The teacher pause, the one that means I'm about to say something important and I need every person in this room listening. I'm ready now. I looked at the table. All those plates, all that paper hiding under chocolate cake. "Everyone, please look under your dessert plate." Hands reached. plates tilted. Paper crinkled as 20 people turned over 20 different pieces of the same truth at the same time. Then quiet. The quiet that fills a room when everyone is reading and nobody knows what to say. Trent picked up the envelope with his name on it, turned it over, recognized my handwriting. His face changed. The smile dropped first, then the color, then the easy posture. He tore it open. Read the card inside. His jaw locked. Mel, what is this? I didn't look at him. I looked at the room. The woman at table 3 is not Trent's coworker. My voice was steady. Teacher voice. Calm, clear, projected across the room the way I projected it across a cafeteria full of 7-year-olds. Her name is Sienna Voss. She and my husband have been seeing each other for 8 months. He spent $11,000 of our family's savings on their relationship. He calls me the roommate in their messages. Sienna stood up. Her face had gone white under the dining room light. What? She looked at Trent. Trent, what is she talking about? Trent's jaw tightened. I watched the switch happen in real time, the way I'd watched it happen 100 times, in our kitchen, in our bedroom, on the phone. The Darvo switch. Deny. Attack. Reverse. Mel, you need to stop. His voice dropped into the concerned register, the one that sounded like worry and meant control. You're embarrassing yourself. You're not well. I told you. I'm not done. 3 words. I said them the way I said eyes on me to 24 second graders. I said them the way I said pencils down during a test. I said them with the voice Trent told me to save for my kids. The voice he said had no place at a dinner party. The voice that held a room of 7-year-olds and held a room of 20 adults just the same. The table was mine. I turned to Deborah. She was gripping her wine glass so tight I could see the tendons in her hand. Deborah, the printout under your plate shows a secondary SIM card activated from your AT&T employee login 6 months ago. You helped him hide it. Deborah's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Her voice climbed. You ungrateful little. She caught herself. But 20 people heard the first half of that sentence. 20 people saw the mask come off the shift from concerned mother-in-law to something else entirely. The woman who had stood up 30 minutes ago to toast the women who choose to support great men was now sputtering at the woman she'd tried to silence. The messages are from Trent's own phone, I said to the room. His own words. His own Venmo history. I didn't make any of it up. He just forgot I could find them. I let that land. Then $11,000. From the savings account he called me financially abusive for checking. The doorbell rang. A man Trent worked with, seated closest to the front hall, looked around and then stood to answer it. He opened the door, and a woman in a dark blazer stood on the porch, holding a manila envelope. Complaint for divorce from bed and board, she said. Trent Pryor. The colleague looked back toward the dining room. Every head at the table had turned. Trent sat with the index card in one hand and the torn envelope in the other, his eyes moving between me and the front door and the woman at table 3. The process server stepped inside, found Trent at the head of the table, and handed him the filing. You've been served. Sienna was crying. She held her printout in both hands, the rooftop bar selfie, and she was staring at Trent with the look of someone whose story had just been rewritten in front of her. You told me she knew. Sienna's voice cracked. You told me it was basically over. Trent pivoted toward her. Just let me. You told me she was the roommate. Sienna looked at me for the first time all evening. Really looked. And what she saw was a 27-year-old woman with freckles and a messy bun and a gray cardigan and hands that weren't shaking standing in her own dining room. And Sienna understood that the roommate was a kind of our person, a real person who cooked this meal and set this table and raised a baby and held a job and did all of it while her husband spent $11,000 pretending she didn't exist. The room had fractured. I could see it happening the way you see ice crack across a pond, each person processing at a different speed. Trent's boss, a heavy man named Garrison, who had complimented the roast twice, was reading his printout for the third time, turning it over as if the back might contain some explanation that made it less damning. A woman from our church small group had both hands over her mouth. A couple near the window were whispering to each other, their eyes moving between Trent and Sienna and the evidence in their laps. One of Trent's college friends pushed his chair back from the table slowly, the way people do when they want to leave a room without being noticed. Trent looked at his boss. Garrison didn't look back. He folded the printout in half, placed it on the table, and adjusted his glasses. The silence he returned was worse than anything he could have said. Trent had spent 3 years building the reliable family man image for this man, and the image was disintegrating under fluorescent-lit Venmo receipts. I picked up my water glass, took a sip, set it down on the table carefully the way you set down something you're finished with. Happy Women's Day. I walked out of the dining room. Teacher pace, the steady, unhurried walk that says, the lesson is finished and I am leaving because I have somewhere else to be. Jody's car was in the driveway. She'd come after my last text, the one that just said, dessert, and she was sitting in the driver's seat with the engine idling and Beck asleep in his car seat in the back. I opened the passenger door and got in. My hands were trembling against my knees. Jody looked at me, shaking like a leaf. Good. It means you're alive. She backed out of the driveway. I didn't look at the house. I watched the street instead, the maple trees lining Birchwood Lane, the porch lights of neighbors who didn't know what had just happened in the dining room 3 doors down. My hands were still shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs and counted the streetlights. Something my second graders did when they were overwhelmed. Count things. Name what you see. Mailbox. Fire hydrant. Stop sign. A cat sitting on a porch railing watching our car pass with the indifference of a creature that had never once cared what anyone thought of it. My phone sat in my lap screen already filling. 14 missed calls from Trent. 3 from Deborah. 2 texts from Sienna. Can we talk? He lied to me too. I didn't answer any of them. For the first time in my adult life, I let the phone ring and just watched it. At Jody's house, I carried Beck from the car seat to the couch. He stirred, grabbed a fistful of my cardigan, and settled back against the cushion without waking up. I covered him with the quilt from the armrest and sat in the guest room with the door open so I could hear him breathing. The house was quiet, a different quiet than the bathroom floor. That had been the quiet of hiding. This was the quiet that comes after you've said the thing and the world didn't end. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Trent. 3 hours later. He'd been calling every person at that table, I was sure of it, working the phones the way he worked a room, trying to spin the story, trying to get ahead of it. 3 hours of damage control, and this was what he came up with. You just destroyed our family over nothing. I hope you're happy. 1147. The same time his text had arrived on Tuesday. Women's Day Friday. Having 20 people over. Dinner. Make it perfect. 3 days. The whole arc of it beginning to end, bookended by the same numbers on the same clock. I typed back. It wasn't nothing. And I'm not happy. But I'm honest. Sent it. Turned off the phone. Sat in the dark and listened to Beck breathe. Sunday morning, I woke up in Jody's guest room before the alarm. The window faced east, and the light came in pale and unfamiliar, landing on walls that weren't mine, a dresser that smelled like cedar and belonged to Jody's grandmother. Beck was in the portable crib beside me, still asleep, one fist curled against his cheek. I lay there and listened to him breathe and tried to remember the last time I'd woken up without a knot in my stomach. I couldn't. Somewhere between year 1 and year 3 of my marriage, the knot had become the default so constant I'd stopped recognizing it as fear. This morning it was gone. In its place was something looser, lighter, closer to hunger. I was 27 years old, sleeping in a borrowed room with my son, and I had nothing figured out. But the knot was gone. The weekend was long and full of texts I saved and forwarded to Caitlin Shore. 47 messages from Trent, cycling through the phases I could now name, because Jody had named them for me. Deny. You misunderstood everything. Attack. You humiliated me in my own home. Reverse. I'm the victim. Here you plan to. Destroy me. Each one screenshotted. Each one forwarded. Each one evidence. Deborah called twice. Left one voicemail. You're going to regret this. Every man makes mistakes. You don't burn down a family over a mistake. I played it for Caitlin over the phone. Caitlin said, keep that. The court will hear it. Sienna texted once Sunday night. He told me you were separated. He told me the marriage was dead. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. Monday morning, Crestview Elementary. Same classroom. The fluorescent light above the reading corner still flickered, the same one from the maintenance request I'd submitted in January. The room smelled like tempera paint and hand sanitizer, and the faint sweetness of the construction paper the kids had been cutting last Friday. The Valentine's Day cards were still pinned to the bulletin board. 24 of them. I still hadn't taken them down. I'd taken down one thing over the weekend. The framed photo of me and Trent that sat on my desk. The one from our honeymoon in Wilmington where we're standing on the boardwalk, and his arm is around me, and I'm laughing at something he said that I can't remember anymore. The spot was empty now. I'd put a small succulent there instead, a little green thing in a terracotta pot that I'd bought at the hardware store Saturday morning for $3. It needed water and sunlight. My coffee sat next to it. Black. Trent always said that was depressing. Who drinks coffee, black, Mel? At least put some sugar in it. I liked it black. I'd always liked it black. Caitlin had filed the complaint for divorce from bed and board that morning on fault grounds. Adultery. The separation clock had started Friday night when I walked out with Beck. The absolute divorce would come after the mandatory year. But the financial fight, the custody fight, the accounting of every dollar he'd funneled to a woman in Durham, all of that was already in motion. The alienation of affection lawsuit against Sienna had been served that morning, too. Jody texted me the update during my drive in. At 8:15, the buses arrived and my students filed in. Connor Ray, Jody's son, handed me a piece of paper on his way to his desk. A drawing in orange crayon. A stick figure woman with brown hair standing in front of a blackboard. The words, "Best Teacher," written across the top in shaky capital letters. I pinned it to the bulletin board next to the Valentine's cards. Ava Cortez sat down in the second row by the window, brown braids, gap-toothed smile. She settled into her chair and raised her hand before I'd even taken attendance. "Miss Pryor, remember when I asked what to do if nobody believes you?" I nodded. "Did you ever have to do that? Tell the truth when nobody believed you." 24 small faces watched me. I stood at the front of my classroom in the same gray cardigan I'd worn Friday night, the same one I'd worn to every parent-teacher conference for 3 years. The one with the inside pocket where I'd kept 15 index, cards that changed my life. "Yeah," I said. "I did. Last Friday, actually. Were you scared, terrified? Did they believe you?" I thought about that. 20 dessert plates, 20 faces reading 20 different pieces of paper. Some of them had looked at Trent with the specific expression people wear when they've been fooled and just figured it out. Some had stared at their plates and said nothing. Trent would never believe me. Deborah would spend the rest of her life calling it a mistake. But the paper was in their hands, and the words were in the air, and you can't unring a bell. Some did, I said. Some didn't. But that wasn't the point. What was the point I said it? Ava considered this. Then she picked up her pencil and opened her workbook, satisfied the way 7-year-olds are satisfied, when the answer is simple enough to fit inside their understanding of how things should work. The bell rang. I opened the math lesson. Page 47, fractions. The fluorescent light flickered and I made a mental note to submit the maintenance request again, because some things you just have to keep asking for until someone finally fixes them. During recess, I checked my phone in the desk drawer. Face up. I kept it face up now. Jody had texted Sienna's been served. Caitlin says Trent's lawyer already called, asking for mediation. She told them to file a response first. "We're rolling." I read it. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just nodded at my phone like it was a student who had finally turned in their homework, and I put it back in the drawer and went outside to watch the kids on the playground. The drive home went the way it had gone since Friday. Past the Pryor house on Birchwood Lane, the one with the crooked truck in the driveway, the one I couldn't enter for a year. Past the elementary school, past the gas station, past the turn that led to my mother's house in Sanford where I grew up, believing that silence was the same thing as safety. To Jody's house. The one that smelled like someone else's laundry detergent and had a couch that was too soft and a guest room with a window that faced east, so the morning light came in early and woke me before my alarm. Beck was in his car seat babbling. He'd said Mama 3 months ago, his first word, the night Trent didn't answer the FaceTime call. Since then, he'd been working on a second word, trying out sounds, getting close and then losing it. We pulled into Jody's driveway. I unbuckled him and lifted him out. He grabbed my collar the way he always did, both fists holding on. "More," he said. I stopped. Held him at arm's length so I could see his face. "More," Beck said again. "Clear. Certain. Like he'd been practicing." I laughed. The first real laugh in months. The kind that starts in your belly and reaches your eyes and doesn't stop because someone is watching or because you're worried about what it sounds like. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "More."